New Thinking Aloud is presented by the California Institute for Human Science, Mind, Body, Spirit University, a leader in fully accredited in-person and online U.S. college degree programs in the topics we cover here. Visit their website at cihs.edu.
Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today we will be talking about out-of-body exploration. With me is Luis Minero, who is the president of the International Academy of Consciousness, an organization with offices in many countries and headquarters in Portugal. Luis is also the director of the California branch of the IAC, and he is the author of Demystifying the Out-of-Body Experience. Welcome, Luis.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure once again to be with you. In an earlier interview, we described many of the characteristics of the out-of-body experience. We talked about how it's been reported in just about every culture around the world. But now I want to discuss with you the reasons that anybody might have today to engage in out-of-body exploration, not just having a spontaneous experience, but using it, cultivating it for the purpose of exploring different dimensions of reality. Yeah. Why would anybody want to?
Yes, that's a very, very valid question. We see different main reasons from different individuals indeed. Certainly one of the bigger ones is overcoming the fear of death, which, as we know, is still very prevalent, in society. Mm-hmm. Many people still obviously fear that transition, fear that moment. And what occurs is the moment that we are outside the body, we realize that here we are existing with in this different form, but it's us, it is our memories, it is our personality. I many times go to the details and I say, well, we are outside the body. You can remember your Facebook password. You can remember your phone number. So you realize it's you with all of your bad jokes and your good jokes mm-hmm. to a certain extent. So the person in a very experiential fashion realizes I will continue existing beyond mm-hmm. the physical death. So I don't need to worry about this state.
And the reason that they know that they're outside of their body is because they're able to see their body.
Because they're able to see their body, that's one thing. And sometimes even because they're able to confirm it, in a lot of different ways. For example, sometimes while we are outside the body, we end up observing something that happened in the physical reality. And then when we come back to the physical reality, we go and just simply mm-hmm. confirm it. And we also realize that we're outside the body. Something else that is very interesting, this very specific type of experience where two individuals leave the body and they find themselves outside the body and they have a common experience. And then afterwards, they both remember, they both came back to the body. And those are very interesting because it takes away the subjectivity mm-hmm. of the experience, because now there is another element of confirmation as well.
Well, the subjectivity is a crucial thing because I'm sure many skeptics are thinking, how do they know that this isn't all the result of fantasy or hypnotic suggestion? You have a very powerful organization in the sense that you have extensive vocabulary, extensive seminars, offices all around the world. There's a normal process of socialization. When people join an organization, they learn the language and the thought patterns of people in the organization. You must want to have some way to separate that from the observation of being out of the body.
Yeah, indeed. And part of that is these types of, experiments. Mm-hmm. First of all, these types of experiences, like the ones I was mentioning, shared experiences.
Yes.
But also we try to provide as much as we can conventional data and do also the more conventional experiments to try to, again, take away the subjectivity from the experience. So there is one aspect which is you have an out-of-body experience, you go, you explore, you try to use it for your own personal development as much as you can. And that's a very big aspect, I think, for most people who want to develop it. Mm-hmm. But there is also the aspect of, okay, let's try to make sure that this is real, that we are having an actual experience. So, for example, one of the experiments that I can, remember here is we have this event, which is a research event, but it's also, a training seminar for many individuals where we have 50, 60 people lying in the ballroom of a hotel. Mm-hmm. And then they are supposed to leave their body, go to another area of the hotel, one of the little maybe ballrooms of the hotel. Yeah. That is closed, and just the only thing that little room has is a computer that is going to pick up from its database of about 500 images, a random image, and display it on the screen. Mm-hmm. And then people should, outside their body, go and see the screen and then come back to the ballroom. Once the session is over, they are given a form. They describe what they saw, and then all of these forms are taken to the auditor who stood the entire time outside of the little room, making sure that physically nobody went into the room. So the person just simply signs attesting to the fact that, nobody opened the door and that he received all of these forms before going in to see what are the images and conferring with the researchers there. So it's, what in science...
So the image is always changing.
It's always changing, and also the data bank is about around 500, and really they have never been shown to the participants. Mm-hmm. So, because when it's, let's say, 500, but they have seen them, the possibilities of guessing would be 1 in 500. Yeah. But when they have never seen them, the possibilities are basically endless. Mm-hmm. And so it can be, a cartoon picture of Mickey Mouse, it can be a landscape, it can be the picture of a lion, it can be just a corner of a chair, it can really be endless.
Well, let's suppose they do very well. At this task. I'm assuming you're getting positive results.
We are getting several hits, of course. And this, first of all, is interesting because it shows that, let's put it first in the most generic of fashions, in some type of non-physical way, the person was able to perceive, the image that was being displayed over there. Yeah. Obviously, it can be also other means beyond out-of-body experience, the way they could have seen it.
Could have been remote viewing.
Could have been remote viewing, could have been an intuition, could have been really several things.
But in the cases of, in your experience, the people actually have a subjective sense that they are traveling to that room.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Their description sometimes is, I left my body, I went, I saw it, I came back, this is what I saw. And also important to say, the auditor who is, standing outside the door, it's usually somebody not affiliated with the ISC. It's normally a journalist or a college professor, somebody with some authority, so as to try to keep the neutrality of the experiment. And what in science we like to call, the double-blind experiment, right? Because nobody really knows what is the image until afterwards. Mm-hmm.
So one of the main purposes of your organization then is to conduct research. And
as well, yes.
One of the main reasons somebody would wish to travel out of their body is to be part of the research.
As well, yes. Be part of the research, losing the fear of death, as we were saying. Other very big things for individuals is, for example, finding out information about this aspect or this idea that we call the life purpose or the life task. Yeah. What is observed is that while you are outside the body, there are different ways in which you can gather information that is going to help you to understand what was it that I wanted to accomplish in this life? Mm-hmm. And of course, this presupposes that idea that we as a essence, a soul, a being, we existed before we were born. And then we plan this physical life, to try to accomplish certain things. And then outside the body, we can gather this information and come back with a greater sense of direction. which is something, by the way, I know we were talking about it in another of the interviews, that happens with the people who have near-death experiences, right? How they come back and they change their priorities and they realize, look, I was born to do X, for example.
Well, in the near-death experience, we often hear about helpers or guides or angelic-like beings, spiritual beings, energy beings, who are there often to tell the person, you need to go back to your body. Your time hasn't come yet. And I gather that in your group also these helpers appear.
Yes, indeed. And this is actually another reason why several people want to do the out-of-body experience, so as to have these conversations, more direct conversations with these evolved beings, benign beings that want to help us and that seem to have a lot of knowledge, that they can give to us. And certainly this is something very feasible outside the body. I would even say from a personal standpoint, I think that these are some of the most interesting types of out-of-body experiences that people can have with these individuals.
But of course, many people report a connection to a spiritual guide or a helper in the body. You don't need to leave your body for that necessarily.
Not necessarily to have the connection, not necessarily to feel them, but the conversation at a more, at a level in which we are more aware, more conscious, more sharper. The out-of-body experience can help quite a bit. And even so as to have a more constant interaction.
And, I understand as I go through your book that there's this notion of, I'm going to put it in my own words, raising your vibrations.
Yes.
When you get out of your body, you have the capability of, I'm going to say vibrating, although that's maybe not the right word, at a higher plane, a higher spiritual plane perhaps than is even possible in the body. So you can communicate with guides at a more evolved level. Would that be the case?
Yes, that's exactly the case. So when we have an out-of-body experience, we have a certain vibration, let me use that description, due to our own level of ethics, our own level of personal development. And then we have the tendency to connect to a certain range of realities or dimensions that connect with our own vibration. But outside the body, you can raise that vibration and raise your awareness, your consciousness, and then connect to realities that are higher, that, they are not our normal, but we can get to those, and then we can interact much easier with the guides or spirit guides.
Now, I know that these days in social media, there are groups of people, large groups, thousands of people who feel an affinity for unearthly places. Like they may feel that they belong in the Pleiades, or they had a past life in Arcturus or Lyra or some other star system. And they're very particular about these other planets, and places where they may have had prior conscious experiences in a different body. Do your people report that sort of thing?
Yes, you also see that. You see that, at this moment, you are having obviously a life in this physical planet and this physical reality. But again, our essence, our soul, our, consciousness, our being had already other lives. And some of those other lives certainly could have been and probably were in different planets, in different, I don't know how clear this would be. Can I say evolutionary schools?
Yes.
Like a different place where we are also going to have experiences and to learn, to develop, and to keep on our progression.
There's a classic book. It came out in the 1960s called Higher Sense Perception, written by the psychiatrist Shafia Karagula. And she talks about people who found themselves in what she called a dream school. They'd go to sleep at night and they'd be in a classroom over and over again. And they were taught things like how to work with astral energies. And one of her psychotherapy patients reported this dream and this repetitive dream, and she recognized another person, a friend of hers from another part of the country, who was in the same classroom, and later on contacted that person and learned that that person had been having the same dreams.
Right. And you observe that when you're outside the body, there are several realities or several dimensions outside the body where there are classes that are undergoing, usually more than anything, to prepare the people before being born for their life task. But certainly also as in an out-of-body experience, or sometimes people in what they call dreams, even though they might be, in an actual non-physical reality, sometimes they can go and attend these classes. And these types of experiences, especially when we are very sharp and very conscious, are very interesting first because they give us an idea of, continuity and evolution, and of the organization, the structure that already exists out there, set up by the spirit guides, if I can put it in this way, to try to help us to understand certain things so that we can come here into the laboratory and in a very hands-on fashion try to apply those principles.
So what you're saying is, if I can interpret, that this other realm, this out-of-body realm or spiritual realm or realms, is well organized. It's well organized, and these types of experiences give us that sense because we realize it's almost as if they have already a structure, a school basically set up with a lot of different types of classes that we can participate in, and then that prepare us for the physical life. Indeed. Almost like college does, right? It teaches us certain things, but then we still have to go out into the real life to learn a few other things. So you're suggesting there is this vast, well-organized dimension of reality, or many dimensions of reality, that most people are oblivious to.
Yes, let me put it this way, for all the evidence that we have and all the out-of-body experiences that I've had, that is what it seems to be. That is something very well organized, and all with the objective of trying to help people to take advantage of this life and to become better individuals, personal evolution, inner growth. And this is in big part also, Jeffrey, why you see that when people are born and, they start to go through their life, they have this internal sense that they were born to do something. And they are searching sometimes for that something. Certainly the out-of-body experience can be a tool that can help them quite a bit to put their finger on what it is.
Because if we were to, let's say, judge by existential philosophy, one might say it's up to you to create your own purpose. It's not something that anyone else gives to you.
And to a certain extent, that is very correct. Is the life task or the life purpose is not something necessarily that somebody will reveal to you or that will give you. Certainly these conversations with the guides are interesting because they don't tell us do A, do B, or do C. But they say, look, there is this information, this other information, this other information. Now choose what is the best for you so that you can learn in your own choices. So, and we are the ones really that end up making our own decisions. So, it's not, just follow these rules. It's certainly not like that.
Well, certainly for this purpose of self-exploration, it seems as if the out-of-body experience is one helpful route. Maybe, studying philosophy might be another helpful route for people. They're probably quite compatible. And in fact, as I think about it, the ancient Greek philosophers seem to be quite familiar with the out-of-body experience and its role in philosophy.
Yes, very obviously now, a couple of centuries removed from that, very hard for us to understand specifically what did Plato mean with the theory of forms. Was he actually, talking about another, actual dimension?
The Platonic realm.
Yes, that he had actually seen that was the ideal, and he was precisely advocating this idea that we're here to try to materialize it or to realize it. Maybe, and also the ideas of Socrates, many of those ideas. So indeed, it could very well be that, throughout history, many of the thinkers had out-of-body experiences. They understood certain things and then they, formulated their philosophies accordingly.
Well, to change the subject a little bit, the U.S. military funded remote viewing research, very much akin to out-of-body work, for 20 years. And one of the main reasons was to find out what the enemy was up to.
Yes.
Mostly in those days, the Russians.
Right. Yes.
Do you find with people who come to your programs have those kind of more mundane interests?
Not so much. No. Usually the interest of most of the individuals are really, again, the personal development. Mm-hmm. These are mainly the main aspects. Certainly I can see how the out-of-body experience could be used for that purpose. But let me say, normally it doesn't, again, even making a connection with some philosophical aspects, something that seems to happen when you are outside the body and you have, let's say, the objective of, spying on somebody or finding out something that it's already implicit and explicit that you shouldn't be there, is normally you don't reach your target. It's almost as if there is this code of ethics outside the body that doesn't allow you, to actually get to that with such an ease. Mm-hmm. But so, for example, if you want to go spy on your neighbor, it's something very hard to get to. But if on the contrary, your intention, and of course your intention needs to be very clear, is I want to go to my neighbor to give him energies, to assist, to help, then you realize that it's much easier to get there. In big part, it seems to be because these spirit guides are helping you to get there, but they will not be involved in an intention that we would consider negative. So then you end up developing more when the intention is more clear, more transparent, more positive than otherwise.
But there must be many other kinds of exploration for which out-of-body travel would be helpful. Like I might want to go inside of a volcano if I were a volcanologist to see how that works. Or if I'm an astronomer, I might want to go right to the inside of the sun to see what's going on there at different levels of solar activity.
Yes, absolutely, without needing to spend $1 billion in a machine that we don't know if it's going to work well. Yeah. And a lot of other things in archaeology and can go and read in the energies, the history, for example, of certain places. So really there are a lot of applications.
And in your group, are people doing things of that sort?
Some of them, yes, but we still need to grow a little more to get more specialists so that we can cover all of these areas. But so we have some individuals that do certain things like this, but they are limited, of course, by their professions. So, for example, in my case, I am not an archaeologist. I am not, I'm a chemist, but really, so I don't use my out-of-body experiences so much for those other purposes.
Now, I recall a theosophical book written around the turn of the 20th century by C.W. Ledbetter, I believe, in which he somehow made himself so small that he could see molecules.
The molecules,
and he began describing visually molecules, what they look like to him. I think those descriptions are still of interest to scientists today. Yes,
indeed. So there is all of that potential. And certainly I would be the first one to say that, the exploration on using out-of-body experiences is still in its baby steps.
Yeah.
So it's almost like when science was still on its baby steps, that you're able to cover some areas, but most of the areas really at this moment are still, untouched. So we need more scientists that can have out-of-body experiences
to be able to get there. The idea that people will have mutual out-of-body experiences.
Yes, indeed.
And that's a way they can kind of confirm with each other that this is not just fantasy.
Exactly. And those are very, very interesting. And I would say those happen sometimes in a very spontaneous fashion and more often than what people realize, simply because if the person is trying to develop their out-of-body experience and a friend or a relative is also doing the same thing, because they already have an affinity, more often than not, at some point, they end up finding themselves outside the body simply because like attracts like, because of affinity, a personal affinity between themselves.
And I'm still trying to get a handle on this whole realm, because it seems as if we're talking about a non-material reality,
Right.
which according to many thinkers would mean it's non-existent, it's metaphysical, or it's pure fantasy. How do you tell the difference? How do you know?
Yeah. Certainly not, it's certainly not materialistic, it's not physical, but that doesn't necessarily preclude it from existing.
Yeah.
Certainly, I would say it's metaphysical, it's beyond the physical, but again, we cannot consider that the only reality that exists is the physical.
In other words, it's ontologically real, even though non-physical.
Exactly.
Now, some people would say that that's a contradiction, but
yes, and I would understand their argument. Sometimes something that happens in conventional science. Yeah. Science, generally speaking, should study all of the phenomena in nature, including, out-of-body experiences, of course. But what happens is that, a big portion of conventional science is very much based on the instrument, on the instrumentalism. Yes. So sometimes, us as scientists, I'm including myself here with all of the rest of the colleagues, we tend to think more or less along the following lines. If my instrument can measure it, then it exists. If my instrument cannot measure it, then it just doesn't exist. Yeah. But of course, this is a technological problem because maybe in 5 years, I'm going to have an instrument that now is able to measure something that I wasn't able to measure before.
Over time, we can certainly expect that instruments will become more sensitive.
Indeed. Mm-hmm. So the fact that at this moment I cannot measure it, or my instrument cannot measure it, doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't exist. Yeah. It only means my instrument at this moment cannot measure it. Mm-hmm. So, and I think we rely so much on our instruments that becomes a little bit of a sort of like a dogma within science, the instrumentalistic dogma that shouldn't necessarily be there.
But what we do have are the testimony now. I should think we're talking about thousands of individuals have provided testimony about these experiences.
Yes. And with the means of communication that we have now, obviously this keeps on piling up. And that's even why many serious scientists, little by little, they start already to pay attention to that and to research it. So not everybody is completely materialistic, but certainly you already see a little bit part of this shift occurring. Mm-hmm.
How about time travel? Is that something that your people are experiencing?
Yes. When you have an out-of-body experience, you can have recollections of past lives, and you can see yourself living, certain scenes or moments of prior existences and in prior periods. You're not able to change that. In essence, you're not really traveling in time like the movie Back to the Future, Right. But you are reliving something that already happened, and it's a very, very much a multimedia experience, as if you are completely immersed in that reality at that moment. And by the same token, you can have, easily outside the body premonitions, precognitions. So just like people can have premonitory dreams, when you are outside the body, more in control, more aware, more conscious, you can also have these premonitions and with a greater level of clarity. So, but in essence, again, you didn't travel in time to the future. You're just simply having a vision and important to say, of a possible future. Because this is not necessarily also set in stone that's exactly what's going to happen.
It's as if the possibilities exist in the present moment.
Yeah. Sometimes I say that it's almost like the weather forecast. That, next weekend they tell us there's an 80% chance of rain, and then 80% of the time it rains, 20% of the times it doesn't. Yeah. But that forecast is based on measuring the current conditions and putting all of these variables in a huge formula and estimating what's going to happen next weekend. More or less along the same lines, the precognitions are almost like a measurement of the energetic information that is around us right now and an estimate of what might occur if all of the variables to a certain extent stay the same, but it's just a probability. This is even why many times some premonitions actually become true. Sometimes they don't.
Well, Luis Minero, this has been a very enlightening conversation. I hope I'm around in 20 years so that I can interview you again and we can look back and see what kind of progress this infant field has made in the next several
Let's
decades.
hope so, if not at least in 10.
Yeah, I'm very encouraged by what you're doing. Thank you so much for being with me.
My pleasure. Thank you, Jeffrey.
And thank you for being with us.
Book 3 in the new Thinking Aloud dialogue series is UFOs and UAP, Are We Really Alone? Now available on Amazon.
You can now download a free PDF copy of issue 7 of the New Thinking Aloud magazine or order a beautiful printed copy.